Hello, welcome again. In this episode, we are going to be taking a look at how to create an openEHR archetype. In the last episode, we saw why we need openEHR to create these detailed clinical content forms. And today we'll be looking at how you can make these yourself. So the first thing that you need to know is that there is this thing called the CKM, and it's the Clinical Knowledge Manager. And this is where people from different parts of the world, they model these clinical models. So there are hundreds of clinical models available today, and you can browse them up here. And things like body weight. And to make it easier for you, they have this thing called the mind map. Just click on that, and it will give you all the aspects of this particular archetype. So you can see that the weight is, in fact, mapped directly to the Loink value here. And it is, the units are kg, gram, etc., etc. So there are hundreds of archetypes like this, and we'll see how we can download all of these archetypes first. So you go into Archetypes and click on bulk export and click on this bulk export button. So that will download all of these archetypes, and it will take some time. Right now there are 780 archetypes, and I'm not going to wait for this because I already have mine here, and it's extracted and ready to go. So I'm just going to close the CKM, and I'm going to open something called the Archetype Designer. So this is at a URL called tools.openehr.org, and I'll put it all in the description down below. So you log in with something. I'm just going to log in with Google. And once you log in, you will get to this particular interface. So here, when you start out, there will be no repositories here. I've just created an example repository. The way you do this is just go to new repository, type in the name of your repository, and just make it a local folder and click on create, and you'll get this something like this. And if you go into your newly created repository, you should see nothing initially to begin with. There will be nothing, and this is because this is how it was built. This particular archetype designer does not know about all of these archetypes that are being created. That is up to the CKM, and it's up to you to upload these archetypes. So let's go and upload these. So you can see that there is an uploader here, and you can just browse, and it's on my desktop. I'm just going to go to my desktop, and you can see under the archetypes folder there are a lot of folders here, and for now the archetype designer accepts only files. So what we are going to do is we are going to quickly extract all of the content inside the folder inside one particular file. You can see that inside each folder there are like hundreds of archetypes. Again, there are a lot of archetypes, and inside entry there are multiple other folders. So what we want is we want all of these archetypes to be under one folder. So I'm just going to open a Linux shell. So you can do this any other way. You can also manually copy paste. I'm not going to judge, but this might be faster. So this is just Stack Overflow again. I'm just going to look up how to extract all of these into one particular folder. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to make a folder called all, and I'm going to find all of the so this finds all of the, this is the directory we are at right now. So what we are going to do is do a glob pattern matching, and since we exported it in .adl format, this will only get us all the ADL files, and it will this is going to copy it to all. So let's do that. Let's wait for it. So we don't want all of these .txt readme files. We just want ADL files, and you can see all of these are ADL files. So I'm going to go back, and seems like it's done, and we have all of these files under all right now. Let's see how many there are. There are 380 items. And that seems like all. Not sure if everything in entry got copied. Let's just see. Just to be sure, I'm just going to go inside entry and do the same command again. So this is under ENTR entry. So we'll do that again, just to copy everything inside entry. It doesn't matter if it's already there, it'll just overwrite. That's how the CP command works. You can also move by changing it to MV. So, yep, let's select this and see how many there are. 759. Yeah, that seems about right. So once we have this ready, just open up your Archetype Designer and click on Browse. And now we have it again on our desktop, but now we have our all folder, and this has all the archetypes exported from the CKM. So I'm just going to open all of these up and click on Upload All. So it's going to take a while to upload all of these, and this is going to progress. So in the meanwhile, we'll take a look at the application that we are going to develop. So I think last time I showed you the COVID care application that we are developing. Let me see. I'm just opening this up. So I'm going to show you a form that we've modeled using openEHR. And I'll show you how we can create that. So again, we have a lot of dummy patients here. So I'm going to go inside my own name. And we have a lot of clinical information here, and the graphs and all of these. So the first thing that we have to do is get this data inside the system. So we need all of these data points to be captured as an openEHR template. So this is what we are going to model today. And I'm going to show you how. So we have a vitals section, and we have temperature, systolic BP, diastolic BP, pulse rate, respiratory. Okay. And again, if you notice here, if the patient is not on air, we want the percentage of oxygen that the ventilator is giving and the flow rate as well. And you have all of these units here. And we have something else here, labored breathing, yes or no. And again, this is an early warning score that automatically gets calculated based on these values. So I'm just going to show you. So if you enter all of these values, you can see that the early warning score, it tries to calculate it automatically. I think we missed one. Yeah, alert or not alert. Yeah, if you enter all of these values, the early warning score gets calculated, and it's a 9 on 20. If it is higher, the patient needs more care. And yeah, so we are actually calculating this dynamically using these values. So I will show you how to build this as an openEHR archetype. Oh no, this is taking quite a while. Okay, so we've uploaded all our archetypes. That took quite a while, but I think we are up and ready now. This is a one-time thing, just have to do it once. So now you can see that our Archetype Designer is charged with all of these different archetypes from the CKM. Now let's go ahead and make a template. So you go to New and click on Template. And it'll ask you a little details about what kind of template this is. And since it's when the patient is coming in, you are encountering the patient and you want to record this as an encounter. So there are multiple types of root archetypes, but for now we will go with encounter V1. So this itself, this composition itself is in fact a template. It is in fact an archetype. And we have to call it something. So let's just call it vitals.v0. It's important to version it here so that you can manage this in your CDR, because the openEHR standard does not have any way to delete archetypes or delete templates once they are put on a system. So you have to version them and manage all of them. So let's call that. And we are here inside the template. So what we need to do first is add some content. So we do that under the content section here. We have other sections as well, like context, and that will be automatically populated for us most of the time. So now the way we look at, in fact, I'm just going to move myself to the top. Yep, I think that's better so that you can see all of this here. So if we go back to the COVID care application, we can see that we have all of these different things. And today we'll just be modeling the vitals section of our template. So what we need first is, this thing is called an ad hoc heading. So this is just a way to add a heading or a section to your template. So when you have a lot of things, it's better to keep it under a particular section. So we'll just add that, and you can rename it anything you want, but we'll go with vitals for now, because we'll be recording the vitals here. Then we have some labs here. Then we have the management section here. We want to separate all of these into their own sections. So under the vitals, again, you're allowed to add as many archetypes as you want. So the first archetype that we will be adding is the temperature, right? So we have temperature here. So let's do that. Body temperature. And again, you can see that there are multiple temperatures, like open air observation temperature V0, and there is body temperature V2. The way you identify what you want is you go to the CKM and take a look at it, or once you add it here, you can also look at the details here. A measurement of the body temperature, which is a surrogate for the core body temperature of an individual. Yeah, that seems like what we are trying to represent. So if once you add the body temperature, you can see that there are a lot of data points underneath it. So things like, the actual temperature, which is, we have multiple units, Celsius and degree Fahrenheit. We have a comment, we have the body exposure, whether the body was naked, had reduced clothing, things like that. But for our application, we are not really recording all of this. We just want the temperature, and we want it to only be in degree Fahrenheit. So what we'll do is we'll constrain everything else to 0. Again, they have things like location of measurement as well, rectum, maxilla, and we really don't care. So at this moment, we'll just click on this, prohibit optional elements, and that will make everything 0 except the one required attribute, which is temperature itself. So again, temperature is a quantity, and we have Celsius and degree Fahrenheit. So we will exclude degree Celsius and only have Fahrenheit, because that's how it's measured in India. But it's about where you are going to implement this also. So I don't know who really uses Celsius for temperature anymore, but they should, because it's the more sensible unit. So again, we have body temperature, and that's it for body temperature. Let's add the next one, systolic and diastolic blood pressure. So again, that will be under blood pressure V2. So let's add that. And again, under blood pressure, there are a lot of attributes, right? We have like position, we have location of measurement, and all of these are already populated for us. So let's just do the same thing again, and we'll only include systolic and diastolic. So, and again, there are two different types of blood pressure that can be measured. One is any event, which is a point in time. You can just record it at any time. This one is a 24-hour average. So again, we don't really measure the 24-hour average, so I'm just going to null that out. So this basically, the occurrences is what we are editing when we click on this button. So when we click on this button, it tells you to change the occurrence to this particular value. So now what does 0.0 mean? So 0 is the minimum number of occurrences that is allowed, and again, this 0 is the maximum number of occurrences that is allowed. So if you look at any event, this is the event itself, and this particular segment is allowed 0 to infinite number of times. Star means infinity. I think if you're coming from fire, this will be familiar. It's the same as cardinality. So what this means is that although systolic and diastolic can only be present once in a particular reading, you can have any number of readings in the same archetype. So we are allowed to have multiple number of events And we'll see that when we get to the front end application. So this looks pretty good for our blood pressure. So we'll go ahead and add the next one, which is pulse rate. I'm just going to look at all of these together: pulse rate, respiratory rate, and SpO2, right? So pulse rate, let's just search for pulse, heartbeat. Yep, let's add that. And again, the same dance. Again, we don't want the maximum. We want only any event. And again, under this, we just want the rate. So we'll, do this again and just the rate. Sometimes you may want regularity and irregularity if you are working in a more inpatient setup. But at this point, this is just an assessment for a very volunteer kind of audience. So we don't want to confuse them with all of these extra things. So again, that's good for pulse. Next, let's add the respiratory rate. Respiration again under data. Let's reduce everything and just include the rate. Depth, no, rate alone should be sufficient for now. So what's the next one? I think it's SpO2. So SpO2, if you search for SpO2, you may not get anything, and that's because it's modeled under something called pulse oximetry. So that's actually what we are representing, and SpO2 is one of the data points inside pulse oximetry. Now we got SpO2 here. Now in some devices, they also measure the concentration of carbon monoxide and what is MET? I think it's methemoglobin and carbon monoxide to detect carbon monoxide poisoning. But right now, it's a very COVID specific thing. We only want SpO2. And the interesting thing is here, again, they have something like the sensor site, the pre or post ductal thing. All of these matter if you're, measuring it in a child. So you need to have the pre-ductal and post-ductal oxygen concentrations. We don't need all of that right now. But another important thing here is SpO2. We want to know if the patient is in fact on air. So we want to know if the patient is on air and we are getting this SpO2 reading, or if the patient is on a ventilator. And if the patient is on a ventilator, we want to know what is the percentage of oxygen that they're giving and what is the flow rate. So for that, each archetype has something called an extension, right? So under state, we have exertion, which is again like another extension, and we have inspired oxygen. This thing is actually called a slot, and a cluster archetype fits inside a slot. So all of these cluster archetypes are meant to fit inside slots. So this will come up pretty frequently, and you have a lot of slots here like waveform, multimedia image. You can even attach an image inside an archetype. So we'll just go into the inspired oxygen slot and insert this cluster. So once you insert this is actually an archetype inside an archetype. So again, this inspired oxygen archetype models the flow rate, the percentage of O2, whether the patient was on air or not, the method of oxygen delivery. So we'll just null all of this out, and we just want the percentage of O2 on air and flow rate, right? So that looks about right for pulse oximetry. So I think this should be enough for now. The reason why we are calculating all of this is to calculate the early warning score. So the early warning score in itself is another archetype. So I'm going to be including that as well. So the thing is, this consciousness here is in fact part of the early warning score. And I have not recorded it as a separate archetype here because I'm going to include the early warning score also. So early warning score is under National Early Warning Score right here. So there are other different ones if you want to use them, but I'm going to go with news. So you can see that they have different data points here, like the respiration rate. And this is a type called as an ordinal. So an ordinal is basically a number that's associated with a coded text. So here we have, if the respiration rate is 12 to 20, give it a value of 0. If it's lesser than 8 or greater than 25, give it 3. And then we add it later on to get the final score. So we have other things as well. So we want all of this and the total score, but we don't really want the clinical risk category or the comment confounding factors. No, we just want all of these, right? This is all that we are going to calculate. Now we are obviously going to automatically calculate the respiration rate by using the value here, but we'll do that in the front end. We'll do that while we are building the application, and we won't do that inside the Archetype Designer. So this seems about enough for now. I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of archetypes. So let's just start simple, and this seems like a simple enough archetype to get template to get started with. So I'm just going to save it. Just generate a build UUID and version 0.1. That's all that is fine. Just save it right now. And once you save that, you can export it, and you can see that all of these translations are automatically generated because all of the archetypes have different translations as well. So if you're going to another Nordic country, maybe we may want Swedish, but we are going to export it to an OPT format. So I'm just going to save this on my desktop, and let's open this. And you see that it's an XML file, and we don't really want to understand this, but we will be using this in the next video where we are posting this template to an openEHR CDR. So I'll see you in the next one, and thank you a lot for subscribing to my channel. I've just recently hit 1,000 subscribers, and it's really humbling. I'll keep making videos to help educate you regarding anything that you want. If you have any suggestions for videos, please put them down in the comments below, and I will see what I can do. And again, thanks a lot. I'm really humbled by all of your enthusiasm and participation, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this video. Please hit that like button, please hit the subscribe button, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. You can also write to me at siddharth@medblocks.org, and I'll get back to you. See you in the next one.